On the night of June 26th, inside Seattle Stadium, a 38-year-old defender named Shoja Khalilzadeh did something he had waited his entire career to do. In the 93rd minute, with the score locked at 1 apiece, he slammed a loose rebound into the Egyptian net. He ripped off his shirt. His teammates buried him in a pile of bodies near the corner flag. For almost 90 seconds, an entire nation believed it had just witnessed the most important goal in its football history, a stoppage-time strike that would send Iran into the knockout stage of a World Cup for the first time since the tournament expanded to 48 teams. Then the broadcast cut to a referee, raising his finger to his earpiece. What followed was a review that lasted nearly 4 minutes. Replays froze on a single image, Khalilzadeh's foot, marginally ahead of an Egyptian defender, at the exact moment the ball was touched. The goal was disallowed for offside. The match stayed level. Egypt advanced. Iran was left waiting on the results of other matches just to discover its own fate. It was not the first time this tournament that video review had decided a World Cup story before the players themselves could, but the reaction that followed, calm on the surface, pointed underneath, has turned a single offside call into something larger. Observers have noted that the conversation now extends beyond one goal, into how Iran has been treated throughout this tournament, and what that says about the relationship between competing nations and football's governing institutions. Big question. So here is the question worth asking. Was this simply the correct application of a complicated law? Or did it become the latest flashpoint in a tournament where Iran already felt it was playing with one hand behind its back? To understand the reaction, you need to understand the context Iran arrived with. This was not a team treated like any other at the global event. Reports indicate that Iran's training base was relocated from Arizona to Tijuana, Mexico, ahead of the tournament, tied to the broader diplomatic situation between Iran and the co-hosting United States. Visa restrictions reportedly prevented some Federation staff from traveling with the squad at all. Iran's head coach, Amir Galanoy, has spoken openly about the toll this took, describing repeated short-notice travel requirements that forced his players onto long flights immediately after matches, cutting into recovery time during a tournament that already demands everything from its athletes. That alone would be significant. But this is where the story changes, because none of that logistical strain showed up in Iran's performances on the pitch. Iran's opening fixtures had already produced 2 goalless draws, including one against tournament heavyweights Belgium. Heading into the final group match against Egypt, Iran knew that only a win would guarantee passage to the knockout rounds. Mehdi Taremi, the team's captain, had a penalty saved in the opening minutes. Egypt took an early lead. Iran answered through Ramin Rezaeian before the quarter-hour mark. What followed was 90 minutes of a team playing, in the words of several broadcasters covering the match, with nothing left to hold back. Why it matters. This matters because the disallowed goal didn't just cost Iran a result, it became a symbol. Critics argue that for a team already navigating travel disruption and base camp relocation, a marginal microsecond-level offside call landing against them at the worst possible moment felt like one more example of circumstances breaking against Iran rather than for them. The contrast has raised questions about whether football's biggest stage offers every competing nation a genuinely level playing field, even when the technology itself is functioning exactly as designed. Here is why this matters technically. The offside call hinged on a detail most casual viewers would never catch. Egypt's goalkeeper had come off his line during the scramble, which meant he was no longer the last defender. A teammate positioned deeper was. That shifted the offside line by a matter of inches, and Khalilzadeh's foot was marginally beyond it at the moment the ball was played. Multiple football analysts examining the replay independently confirmed the application of the law was correct. According to reports from outlets that broke down the sequence frame by frame, this was not an error in the system. It was the system working exactly as intended, even if the outcome felt cruel. Wider implications. Yet the situation goes further than one isolated decision. This tournament has already produced a string of marginal technology-driven calls that have decided matches by fractions of a second. Semi-automated offside lines, goal line sensors, and pitch-side monitor reviews that strip away the human instinct to call a goal in real time. Supporters across multiple nations have noted a recurring tension. The more precise the technology becomes, the less room remains for the kind of split-second injustice football has always lived with, but also for the kind of split-second triumph that used to belong entirely to the players. What happened next said as much about Iran as the goal itself. Rather than direct anger outward, the Iranian squad left a handwritten note in their locker room, later shared by the country's football federation. It spoke of honor valued above victory, of football as a test of character rather than simply a contest of results. It was the second such message of the tournament, following a similar note left after the goalless draw with Belgium. Galinoy, addressing reporters afterward, struck a similarly restrained tone, accepting the technology, accepting the rule, while still voicing frustration at what he described as a pattern of difficult circumstances surrounding his team's tournament. Institutional analysis. This is where the institutional picture comes into focus. Galinoy specifically called on football's governing body to do more to protect competing nations from logistical disadvantages tied to geopolitical circumstances beyond the sport itself. He referenced FIFA President Gianni Infantino directly, suggesting that while efforts had been made to ease some difficulties, the host nation's accommodations for Iran fell short of what the situation required. That is a notable moment. A coach, at a press conference during the world's largest sporting event, asking the sport's central authority to intervene more forcefully on behalf of a team navigating circumstances no rulebook was designed to anticipate. Counter-argument. It is worth presenting the other side plainly because the broader picture is genuinely two-sided. The offside decision itself has been defended by officiating experts as a clean, correct application of the law, with no indication of bias in the review process. Tournament organizers can reasonably argue that base camp logistics, while disruptive, were managed within the framework of existing travel regulations, and that every team at a global event of this scale faces some form of disadvantage. There is no verified evidence that the VAR outcome was influenced by anything beyond the positioning of players on the pitch at the moment the ball was struck. Bigger picture. The larger question is what this moment reveals about the modern relationship between players, nations, and the institutions that govern football's biggest stage. Technology was introduced to remove human error and produce fairer outcomes. In Seattle, it did exactly what it was built to do. And yet the emotional and political backdrop surrounding Iran's tournament meant that a textbook correct decision still landed as something heavier. A reminder that fairness on the pitch does not always erase the sense of imbalance surrounding it. What stays with you from that night in Seattle isn't really the offside line. It's the image of a team that had every reason to feel wronged, choosing instead to write a message about honor and walk away with their heads held high. Football's biggest stage ran its system correctly. But the human story sitting underneath that system, the travel, the war back home, the years of waiting for a moment like this, is the part the numbers can never fully capture. So here's the question worth sitting with. When a decision is technically correct but the circumstances around it feel deeply unequal, where should football's governing institutions draw the line between enforcing the rules and accounting for the human reality behind them? Let me know what you think in the comments.